had a job as a COO at a health tech firm, and it was a promising startup. And I just joined, and I said, you know what, guys, my heart is in e-commerce, and really I'm interested in this cannabis thing. I'm going to go do this.
Right.
So we needed a place to set up. I was living in Austin at the time. We were going to do it in Austin, make the distribution center in Austin and the company headquarters. But like a week into that, and a week into looking at warehouse spaces in Austin, the Supreme Court of Texas ruled that you can no longer process hemp here. So you could still smoke it, you could possess it, you could buy it, you could sell it, but you could no longer take a pound of it and break it down to eighths.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because that would just create more jobs and
exactly.
tax base.
And they never actually enforced that. But we thought, you know what, let's not set ourselves up for failure here. We can still pivot.
Right.
So we looked at Oklahoma because it's, just north of Texas, and it's an easy flight, and it was cannabis friendly at the time, and it was also very hemp friendly at the time.
Right.
So, a week later, I just moved to Oklahoma, and, I grabbed an Airbnb, and I just started looking for warehouse spaces, and I found a space. And, it was like we were in this like kind of pre-work phase for 4 or 5 months, which is actually, it sounds like a long time. It's really fast to find the vendors and to make the packaging, to hire the staff, to set up the SOPs, to set up the infrastructure, make the website. Like it was quick. And we launched. We just, like, that's us. It's a bias to action. We don't want to sit around and let perfection be the enemy of good
100%.
enough. Yeah.
Say that again, just for people that are interested in being an entrepreneur.
You have to act. It's a bias to action. You have to just launch. Launch.
Yeah.
Do not let perfection be the enemy of good enough. You always, as a startup operator, you always look for the 90-10 solutions, because a solution that's 90% of the way there that you can enact now, and you always can find those 90% solutions. It's always better than waiting months or weeks.
Just go.
And, in the words of Casey Neistat, it's impossible to steer a non-moving vessel. So you just got to move, and then you pivot and you steer and you find your path. But so we launched, and we had no sales, and it was a total flop for like the first week. They're pulling out our hair. We're running ads. We're trying to buy customers. We can't crack it.
Right.
And I'm like, working like without exaggeration, like 120 hours a week. We had nobody to help any of this stuff. And I start calling all of the people that had filled up a shopping cart but not bought. And then if they'd put in their phone number, I'd call them up. I'd say, like, hey, this is David with Mood. Can you tell me why you didn't buy? And, can I tell you anything about the company? And I wasn't really trying to close the sales. I was just trying to understand who are the customers, what do they care about, what do they want, and where do we fall short? And we made some changes to the website that were informed by those discussions. And then, boom, we're off to the races. All of a sudden, the site is converting. We can put in $1 of ad spend and get at least $1 of revenue back out, and we're just off to the races. I think our second month we did $1 million. Yeah,
that's drug dealing, dude. You can bubble quick.
It's fast moving water.
$1 million in revenue. Okay, in the second month, and this is just all online. This is e-commerce.
This is e-commerce. This is all online. Yeah.
Tell us about Oklahoma, the state of the illegal marijuana. Why is illegal marijuana in Oklahoma thriving? What were the laws that allowed that, and why was it good for legal hemp production as well?
Yeah, so Oklahoma did something really progressive, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago.
For once in their life.
For once in their life, they legalized marijuana for recreational use, and they would just give licenses to anyone who had, I think it was like $1,000 at the time to apply for a license, and you could become a grower, you could become a dispensary, and they said, because it was Oklahoma, it was this really downtrodden state. A lot of industry had left the state. They managed to attract a lot of logistics trade. You have, Amazon and Hobby Lobby, and it's a central hub. But they also wanted marijuana, and they've also done really well on oil and natural gas. Right. But so marijuana, they kind of said it's a free-for-all, and that kind of came back and bit them in the ass. Two things happened. One, severe price compression. When everybody's selling a materially similar good to a set number of customers, the only thing that they're really competing on is price. So they're just undercutting each other.
Right.
It also opened the floodgates for the Chinese cartels.
Right.
So in Oklahoma, you have these massive operations that are run by the Chinese. They use these really nasty, toxic pesticides. Right. They just churn this stuff out like a factory farm. And then a lot of times they sell it to the dispensaries, who are very happy to buy it through the back door and then sell it to be able to hit their, $50 an ounce prices.
Right. Wow. $50 an ounce.
That's trash weed. That's
Right.
trash weed. But like,
Right.
yeah, in Oklahoma, especially outside of Oklahoma City, you're driving around like, 20 miles out, you'll see, road signs for dispensaries that say like $50 an ounce. Wow. And you go in and you look and it's, you would never want that weed, but like,
so really? So what are the Chinese cartels? Are these greenhouses that they're growing in?
a lot of times it's greenhouses. Yeah.
And like, I know the Chinese make, it's like the stereotype, like you got it from China, they make products, but like, have they not teamed with cartels to figure out how to grow? Because Mexican cartels grow good weed.
Some of the Chinese
trust
weed
me,
is
I used to
good,
buy
yeah.
a lot from them.
Sure.
So
some of it, make no mistake about it, it's as good as, well, it looks as good as any light depth that's out there. The difference is that it's not grown with any kind of controls, and they really are putting like some really toxic to that weed, which is probably no different than Mexican drug cartels, who they're like, why would I spend $10 a kilo for this fertilizer or pesticide? I can spend, $1. Yeah, which is actually it's interesting tangent about cocaine. The reason cocaine is so toxic is because of the heavy metals. Why are there heavy metals in cocaine? Because when you're going through the extraction process, you need a solvent. Well, you should be using like 99% pharmaceutical grade ethyl alcohol. That's very expensive. Just use gasoline, which has a lot of heavy metals that never get boiled out. So you're snorting heavy metals if you do cocaine.
So if they could figure out how to get the price of ethanol, pure ethanol down, they could make like relatively healthy cocaine.
I don't know about healthy, but certainly some people would say it's part of a balanced diet.
Yes, yeah. We'll say not as bad as bread.
Not
at
as
least
bad. Depends on the bread. Yeah. Right, yeah.
Wonder Bread, dude.
Wonder Bread. I know it's.
I'd rather do a line of
bad.
cocaine than eat like a '90s diet.
Yeah,
remember
like
they
when
tried
you
to push all
squish
the
it.
weed on us. They told us you should be eating 11 servings of wheat a day. That is the problem with fiat currency. That's the big agriculture being shoved down our throat.
Are you a fan of Maha? Make America Healthy Again.
Yes, I
It's
am.
like push
I am.
towards away
I
from
am.
seed oils into naturals. And
I am.
same.
Now,
Yeah.
it does go against libertarian principles
How so?
because they're putting a lot of regulation on industry. However, that industry has been propped up not by the free market, but by the largesse of government subsidies, which come from money printing and our tax dollars.
We spend a lot of money to make high fructose corn syrup cheap. Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of like, most countries are like, they give farmers help to raise beef.
Sure.
And healthy things,
Sure.
not. But anyways, this is fascinating. So Oklahoma, there was a huge, sounds like Oregon, and huge price drops in
huge
wholesale
price.
marijuana.
Yep. And there was this moment of reckoning as well, where they started to look at the Chinese cartels who were starting to cause violent incidents and, a lot of shootings and robberies. Right. And they started to say, okay, you know what, we gotta clear the deck of the bad players. We got to clean things up. We got to tighten everything up. The people that have licenses, they're not making any money, and it's incentivizing this vacuum where the Chinese are filling it with cheaper weed. And I think in that as well, they associated hemp with the bad actors. It was either that, or it was a function of thinking that hemp is competing with their marijuana industry, which they're making a very tidy sum of tax revenue from, and not wanting that. I wasn't part of those meetings, so I don't know. But
where were you getting your product at the time?
All over the country. Any state where hemp is lawful to grow and a grower can grow lawful hemp, they can ship it to us, because in the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, there is it's called a dormant commerce clause, which means that it facilitates interstate commerce. You cannot seize and detain a package of lawful hemp, even if it's traveling through a state which has carved out their own anti-hemp rules.
Okay,
so
if a state trooper if I was a state trooper and I pulled somebody over and they had 50 pounds of THCA, hemp versus marijuana, nobody can tell the difference. Just by sight and smell. Nobody can tell the difference.
By sight and smell, no.
So have you had any problems with like interdiction?
Yeah, we've had interdictions of individual packages. I think some of our vendor shipments have gotten seized as well, but they get released.
So they'll actually take them in and test them?
Yeah, they'll test them. Wow. They'll say, okay, this is lawful hemp and it shall not be detained.
Wow. How do you get most of, and I think you said you buy most of your wholesale product from California, right?
Some of it comes California and Oregon and North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. I mean, it comes from any state with a robust farming industry.
Okay.
Or hemp farming industry.